Imagine for a second you go to the bank and the agent tells you that you're now eligible for a new online banking service. You sign up, excited. But when you run into some issue, who do you call? Your 12-year-old. Problem solved. A few days later, you're trying to create a post for Instagram and you hit another wall. Who comes to your rescue again? Your 12-year-old. And in your mind, you think, this child knows what they're doing. I'm the one who is not tech savvy. I don't understand this technology thing. Sounds familiar? Today, we need to talk about why that thinking, as understandable as it is, could be leaving your child without the protection they actually need. Welcome back to Corner Talk. I'm Miss Techie. In our first 2 episodes, we focus on adults, on our screen time, and what the research says about how it affects our well-being and our brains. I said from the beginning that before we talk to our kids about technology, we need to take an honest look at ourselves first. We've done that. Now it is time to talk about our children. And I want to start by clearing up something that I think a lot of parents believe without realizing it. Being good at using technology is not the same thing as being safe, wise, or responsible with it. And today, we're going to talk about why, and more importantly, what we can all do about it. Before I go further, let me make this clear, that this episode is not about whether you should give your child a device. That's a whole separate and important conversation, and I have a dedicated episode coming for that. This episode is for parents and guardians whose children already have access to a device or who will have access to one in the future. If that is you, keep watching. If you're a native English speaker who knows the Hebrew alphabet well enough to sound out words on a page, does that make you fluent in Hebrew? Of course not. You might be able to read the letters out loud, but if you cannot hold a conversation, understand what you read, or express yourself clearly, you're not reading Hebrew, you're just calling out sounds. And there's a big difference between the two. Technology works the same way. Your child might be able to edit a video in minutes, navigate an app you have never opened, fix a device problem that have had you completely stuck. That's impressive. But that is tech literacy, knowing how to use the tool. What most children have not been taught is digital literacy, knowing how to use it wisely, knowing when to post and when not to, knowing who to trust online and who not to, knowing that what they share today can follow them for years. That deeper understanding, that wisdom, is a completely different skill. And like reading, it has to be taught. Tech literacy is what most children pick up naturally just by growing up around devices, using apps, watching videos, creating content, troubleshooting problems. Children absorb these skills the same way they absorb the language spoken around them at home, without being formally taught. And because they do it so easily and so confidently, we assume they know what they're doing. But knowing how to use something is not the same as knowing how to use it well. Digital literacy goes deeper. It is about thinking critically, asking the questions before you act. Questions like, is this information true before I share it? Could this photo or message hurt someone or come back to hurt me? Who can actually see what I just posted? What is this app collecting about me and why? These are not questions children naturally think to ask. They are questions that they have to be taught, the same way we teach children to look both ways before crossing the street. The danger is not always visible. Now, I want to say this with a lot of care because this is not about blame. It is about understanding. We expect children to learn to read, but we do not just hand them a book and hope for the best. We teach them explicitly, step by step, for years. We give them teachers, resources, and time because we know that reading does not happen on its own. Digital literacy is exactly the same. Children do not develop it just by being on devices. They need to be taught explicitly, consistently, over time. But here's the reality. There are many countries around the world, including many across the Caribbean and in Guyana, where there's no formal digital citizenship curriculum in schools. None. which means millions of children are going online every single day without ever being taught how to do it safely, ethically, or wisely. And then we wonder why they make poor choices. If you're a parent or a guardian, I want to say something directly to you. We cannot expect parents to teach these skills to their children where they themselves have never been taught them. This is not fair. You cannot give what you do not have. If no one ever explained what a digital footprint is, or how an algorithm works, or what grooming looks like online, how would you know to teach your child those things? You wouldn't. And that is not your fault. That is a gap in the system, and it is exactly the gap that this channel exists to help close. As always, I want to bring in the research because this is not just my opinion. Today, I'll cite 5 different studies to back up what I'm saying. In 2011, researchers Gui and Argentine, not sure if I'm pronouncing their names correctly, tested 980 high school students on 3 things: how well they could use technology, how well they understood how digital environments work, and how well they could think critically about what they found online. Students did very well at using the technology. But when it came to critical thinking, judging whether information was reliable, understanding how search results were chosen, their performance was significantly low. Now, these teenagers were using technology every day, but critical thinking about technology, that was not an area that seemingly had been taught to them. A more recent study by Starks and Rich in 2024 titled Children's Sense-Making of Algorithms and Data Flows Across YouTube and Social Media spoke directly with 34 children aged 8 to 11 about what they understood about algorithms, data collection, and online privacy. Most of them had significant gaps in their understanding, for they didn't understand how algorithms were used to shape what they saw. They didn't know what information apps were collecting about them, and almost none of them were doing anything to protect themselves. But these children were using these applications every single day with confidence. I think this next study will surprise a lot of parents. I know many of us have parental controls set up on our children's devices and feel that that covers it. But in this 2023 study, where the researchers surveyed nearly 3,000 families and compared what parents said they knew about their child's online lives with what the children themselves reported, parents who used monitoring apps and technical controls actually knew less about what their children were doing online than parents who did not use them. The researchers call it a false sense of security. The apps gave parents confidence without giving them actual knowledge. Children who knew these tools were there found ways around them, and parents who relied on those tools stopped having the conversations that would have actually kept them in the picture. For example, when children had been bullied or targeted with hateful messages online, 91% of parents had no idea it had happened. When photos of their child had been shared without permission, most parents did not know. The more serious the experience, the more harmful, the more embarrassing, the less likely the parent was to know about it. What actually worked? Conversation. Ongoing, open conversation between parent and child. That was the only strategy consistently connected to parents genuinely knowing what was happening in their child's digital life. Not the app, not the rules, the relationship. Steinfield's 2021 study looked at over 500 parents and adolescents. What they found was simply taking away the device or setting strict restrictions did not actually make children safe online. In fact, children who would only experience restrictions without conversations were more likely to take risks when they did go online because they had never been given the chance to build their own judgment. What actually worked was ongoing conversations. Parents staying engaged, talking about what their children were seeing and doing online, building trust over time. The research called it active mediation. I call it staying in the relationship. And finally, researchers in a 2024 study developed a digital parenting education program. And before they started, they interviewed parents to understand what they already knew. One parent said, "I honestly have no idea what digital parenting is." but I would like to know. Another said, my child watches YouTube on his tablet, and sometimes I hear him using bad language. I can't always control what he watches or where he goes. Another said simply, I don't know what to do. These parents were just never given the tools to support their children's digital literacy skills. And so after completing the program, their ability to protect their children actually improved. And it stayed that way for months later. Now, what I take away from this is, when parents are given the knowledge, they use it. The problem was never the will. It was the access to information. Now, after looking at all that research, I wanted to do something personal. So I teach digital citizenship. And because my son attends a school where I work, he's actually one of my students. So when I read that study where researchers interviewed 34 elementary school students, I wanted to see what my own child knows. So he just finished second grade, and so I know exactly which topics we had covered and which conversations we've had at home. So I came up with a list of questions. Some were based on what we've already discussed, and some were hypothetical on topics we had not explicitly covered, because I wanted to hear how he thinks. I was not looking for perfect answers. I was looking for an honest picture of where he is. And what I found was both encouraging and eye-opening at the same time. Sometimes you watch YouTube Kids, right? You know how when you finish watching one video, another video comes up? You know how that happens? All right, so how do you think YouTube knows which was another video to show you?
Because they just do random ones.
What do you mean by that?
But it's because it's mostly about Minecraft, because I usually watch Minecraft a lot, that it chooses Minecraft a lot.
No, I'm going to talk about when you're online. What kind of information should you keep private?
Where I live.
What else?
My iPad passcode.
No, if you met somebody online and they told you to keep a secret from me, what would you do?
I would not listen to them.
So what would you do?
I would tell you.
You'll tell me? Okay.
Or call the police.
Call the police? How would the police know? Do you think the police would know who they are and where to go?
Yes, because how does the police know where we are?
Somebody has to tell them. But do you know where another person is? Is it online? Do you know exactly where they are?
No.
So would you be able to send a police to them?
No.
I know that your favorite game to play in the whole wide world is, or we'll say it together, 1, 2, 3, it's what? Minecraft. Okay. Now, right now I know that the way that I set up your Minecraft account, what are some of the things you cannot do on Minecraft because of how I set it up?
I cannot change my Minecraft name.
What else?
I can't chat.
You can't chat. What else you can do?
I cannot buy things.
Can you add friends?
No.
Okay. Now, let us assume, okay, that maybe I didn't have those locks on your on your Minecraft account. Maybe I allowed you to chat with people and I allowed you to add friends, okay? So imagine that. If somebody that you were playing, okay, so maybe you met someone, a player, you don't know the person in real life, you just know their Minecraft name, okay? And they came and they joined one of your games.
My server.
Oh, sorry. They joined your server. And they asked you, what's your real name? What would you say?
I would say a lie.
Why?
Because I don't want them to know my name.
Why?
Because they will maybe make fun.
Okay.
So I would just tell them just a random name.
Okay. If somebody offered to give you free Minecraft stuff, but said that you need to keep it a secret from me, what would you do?
I would not listen to them.
Why?
I'll tell you.
This is what I want you to take away from this. My son attends a school where digital citizenship is explicitly taught. He has a parent at home who teaches this content. He has strict settings on his devices, and he still has gaps. Not because he's not smart, but because he's 8 years old and his brain is still developing. And that is completely normal. I'm sharing this with you not to show off what he knows or to highlight what he does not. I'm sharing it because I want you to have an honest picture of what this looks like in practice, even in a home where digital citizenship is a priority. And I also want to encourage you to have this same conversation with your own child, not as a test, not as a lecture. Just sit beside them, relax, and ask them what they think. You might be surprised by what they already know, and you will almost certainly find something that opens your next conversation. I will share the questions I asked them in the description below, so you can use them at home with your own child. Because this kind of conversation, simple, low pressure, and curious, is exactly what active mediation looks like. And it's one of the most powerful things that we can do. Here are some tips for parents or guardians who've already gone through an incident with their child online, or who will go through one in the future, because it's bound to happen. As I mentioned earlier, I teach digital citizenship to elementary students. All of my students have been taught what is right. They can tell me the rules, they understand why the rules exist, and some of them have still made poor choices online. That's not a signal that the teaching failed. That's a sign that they're children. The part of their brain that controls impulse, that helps us to think, pause and think before we act, is still developing well into a person's 20s. Because knowing and doing are two different things when your brain is still growing. That means our job as parents is not to teach once and consider it done. Digital literacy is not a single lesson. It is an ongoing conversation that keeps growing as our children grow. It is regular check-ins. It is creating an environment where your child feels safe enough to come and talk to you when something goes wrong. Because something will go wrong. The most important thing is that they know they can tell you. Not because there will be no consequences, but because hiding it will always make things worse. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but remember, technology is not going anywhere. And at some point, your child will go online. So we owe it to them to give them the tools they need to stay safe. Let me say this, and this comes not from just being a parent, but from years of working with parents as an educator. Even before I read the research on this topic, I already knew that parents are often not in the loop about what their children are doing online. I've seen it firsthand. I've had conversations with parents who were genuinely shocked and sometimes did not even believe some of the things their children had done or experienced. And that is not because those parents were careless. It is because children often behave very differently at home than they do at school or online. Any teacher will tell you this. Now, that first-hand knowledge is part of why I am so intentional with my own teenage daughter. I don't wait for something to go wrong. I ask the direct questions, even when she's uncomfortable, even when she rolls her eyes, even when she clearly does not want to have the conversation. I give the talk anyway, because I know from experience that children hear us even when they act like they're not listening. Even when they're embarrassed in the moment, even when they will never admit it out loud, the conversation still lands. And that is enough of a reason to keep having it. Now, what works in my home may look different from what works in yours, but the principle is the same everywhere. Conversation before access. Expectations before the device. Trust built before freedom given. And rules explained, not just enforced. If there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's this. The fact that your child has not been formally taught digital literacy is not your fault, and it's not theirs either. It is a gap in our systems, but we don't have to wait for the systems to catch up. We can start a conversation at home right now with what we know. And every episode of Corner Talk is designed to give you a little bit more to bring to that conversation. So I want to hear from you. What is one thing from today that surprised you? Or that you are going to do differently? Drop it in the comments. And if this episode spoke to someone you know, like a parent, a teacher, a grandparent, share it with them. Because the more of us who have this knowledge, the safer our children will be. This is Corner Talk, where we get real about technology, rooted in research and ready for real life. I'll see you in the next one. Shalom.